Good morning, all of you. Welcome to Ansarkari. So, in this video, we'll be analyzing the newspapers for 25th of April 2023. So, we'll be starting with the Hindu newspaper first of all. So, here we are seeing कि कल ही हमने बात करी थी कि तमिलनाडु स्टेट में देयर वाज अ फैक्ट्रीज एक्ट जिसमें अमेंडमेंट की गई थी एंड वर्किंग आवर्स को एक्सटेंड कर दिया था अप टिल 12 आवर्स फॉर वन डे। पहले 8 घंटे की लिमिट थी, 8 घंटे की लिमिट थी और उसको विद दिस अमेंडमेंट 12 घंटे इंक्रीज कर दिया था। बट नाउ दिस अमेंडमेंट इट हैज बीन पुट ऑन होल्ड इन द स्टेट ऑफ तमिलनाडु। एंड इसके अलावा हमने इसको कल एनालाइज कर लिया था, तो आज उसका एनालाइज करने की जरूरत नहीं है। Then moving on to the next news, we are seeing that India braces to evacuate nationals from Sudan. So India, it has sent the planes and the required things. So we have taken the required steps so as to successfully evacuate the struck Indians in Sudan. क्योंकि Sudan में war चल रहा है. There is a conflict and war going on between the military and the paramilitary forces in Sudan. So वहाँ पे Sudan में अभी कुछ दिन पहले मिलिट्री से स्टेटमेंट आया था कि वी आर रेडी फॉर अ सिविलियन रिजीम, सिविलियन गवर्नमेंट। बट लेट्स सी अभी के लिए जो ये ऑपरेशन है इसका नेम इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है। इट इज नेम्ड ऑपरेशन कावेरी। सो इट विल बी रेस्क्यूइंग 3000 स्ट्रैंडेड इंडियंस। 500 ऑफ देम दे हैव रीच्ड द पोर्ट सुडान। सो लोकेशन भी पता होनी आपको इम्पोर्टेंट है। एंड वी हैव सेंट सी 130J heavy lift aircraft and naval ship. They are on standby for this mission. So ये standby पे है and the name of the mission is मिशन कावेरी। सो इससे रिलेटेड जो पास्ट में भी ऑपरेशन हुए वो भी इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाते हैं। इट कैन कम अप इन द फॉर्म ऑफ मैच द फॉलोइंग। देन कमिंग टू द थर्ड न्यूज, हियर वी आर सीइंग कि आफ्टर डेथ ऑफ 2 चीताज जो हमने ट्रांसलोकेट किए थे फ्रॉम नामिबिया टू मध्य प्रदेश में कूनो नेशनल पार्क में, उसमें से 2 चीता जो हैं वो ऑलरेडी दे हैव डाइड एंड मध्य प्रदेश नाउ इट सीक्स न्यू साइट फॉर द फिलाइंस। सो लेट्स सी कि मतलब ऑब्वियसली यहाँ पे रीजन हमें पता होना चाहिए कि व्हाट आर द चैलेंजेस या जिसकी वजह से वी हैव लॉस्ट 2 चीताज। एंड अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस जो इंडिया में सारे नेशनल पार्क्स हैं उन सबकी लोकेशन वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरीज हैं, दे आर ऑल्सो इम्पोर्टेंट। देन जो इम्पोर्टेंट फैक्ट्स है रिलेटेड टू चीता वो ऑब्वियसली बहुत ज्यादा कॉमन है, सबको पता है कि कब मतलब सिंस इंडिपेंडेंस दिस इज द ओनली लाइक वाइल्ड लाइफ स्पीशीज जो इंडिया में एक्सटिंक्ट था सिंस 1952 एंड या दैट्स देयर। सो इसके अलावा नेशनल टाइगर कंजर्वेशन अथॉरिटी, इसका स्ट्रक्चर, नेचर क्या है, वो सब इम्पोर्टेंट हो जाता है। सो यहाँ पे जो हम चैलेंज की बात करते हैं, मोस्ट ऑफन बात करते हैं जो कैपेसिटी है ऑफ कूनो नेशनल पार्क टू होस्ट चीताज। सो दैट इज वन चैलेंज। सो लॉजिस्टिकल सपोर्ट आ जाता है फॉर द अपकीप ऑफ चीताज एंड या सो दैट्स देयर। लेट्स मूव फॉरवर्ड। तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट का बोलना ये है कि गवर्नर्स दे शुड नॉट सिट ओवर द बिल्स। सो गवर्नर की जो वीटो पावर्स हैं, जो डिस्क्रिशनरी पावर्स हैं, वो इम्पोर्टेंट हो जाता है अगर है भी तो, लाइक डिस्क्रिशनरी पावर की मैं बात कर रही हूँ। एंड पार्डनिंग पावर्स, ऑल ऑफ दैट वो आप एक बार देख सकते हो, बेसिक कंसेप्ट है। देन वी हैव आर्टिकल 200 ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन विच मैंडेट्स की गवर्नर्स दे शुड नॉट dally over the bills sent to them for the assent after they had been passed by the legislative assemblies. So governor, they can't like indefinitely, they can't sit over these bills which have been already passed by the state assemblies. And Supreme Court, it has sent a strong message that governors, they should return the bills that they do not agree to as soon as possible and not sit over them, making the state legislative assemblies wait indefinitely. So agar governors, they do not agree with the bill that has been passed या certain provisions of it, तो even in that case they should not sit over the bills. आप उनको वापस return कर दो under the respective power that you have, and you don't have to delay things over. And then we have already talked about article 200. So state of Telangana में issue देखा जा रहा है and that's how it is in news. तो यहाँ पे सारी पॉलिटिकल न्यूज है. कमिंग टू द एडिटोरियल पेज, अगेन यहाँ पे पेंडिंग बिल्स का इशू है. गवर्नर और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के बीच में जो एक तरीके से टसल है यहाँ पे. देन वील बी कंपेयरिंग इट विद द सिस्टम इन यूनाइटेड किंगडम. सो लेट्स स्टार्ट. पहले तो तमिलनाडु गवर्नर, एक वहां पे भी इन दिस स्टेट ऑल्सो वी आर सीइंग issue between governors and the incumbent government. So the governor of Tamil Nadu was again in news recently जब Tamil Nadu Assembly passed a resolution urging the President of India, among other things, to fix a timeline for the assent to be given to the bills passed by the Assembly. तो इसका मतलब ये है जो Constitution में articles mentioned है, या we can say कि Constitution में it is not mentioned कि कितने time period में governors they have to provide their assent to any bill that has been sent to them for the assent. So this was the demand by Tamil Nadu government कि उन्होंने ये चीज डिमांड रेज करी थी फॉर दी प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ इंडिया कि please fix a timeline so that governor acts in a time bound manner. But the immediate provocation for the resolution was the governor's public statement April 6 पे, where he said कि if the bill is passed by the legislature, it transgresses the constitutional limits, then it is the governor's responsibility not to give the assent. So several bills passed by the assembly, they have been pending as governor has not made any decision. So ये बहुत common issue है. And going through relevant articles, so already article 200 की बात हम कर चुके हैं. Then we are seeing Article 355 of the Constitution says that it shall be the duty of the Union to ensure that the government of every state is carried on in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. So the general meaning and purpose of the article was explained by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar sir in the Constituent Assembly also. So to provide the justification for the invasion of the provincial field which the union government may have to do. So, but the constitution is a dynamic document whose concepts and doctrines, they have been interpreted and reinterpreted and also explained by the courts from time to meet the changing needs of the society. So definitely जो constitution है, that is a dynamic document, things are evolving, so accordingly interpretations भी उसी तरीके से shape हुई है, उसी तरीके से evolve हुई है as per the needs of the society. So we see कि although this article was meant to provide justification for the central intervention in the states, its scope and range, it needs to be widened. So constitution requires the governor to act when a bill is passed by the assembly and present it to him as per the options which are given in article 200. So these are the normal जो provisions है, normal जो procedure follow किया जाता है. And if he does not act in accordance with the constitution and sits on the bill indefinitely, he is creating a situation where governance of the state cannot be carried on in accordance with the constitutional provisions. So ऐसी situation में government of state has a constitutional duty to invoke article 355 and inform the president about it and request him or her to give suitable instructions to the governor to ensure that government is carried on in accordance with the constitution. So ultimately it is the sole responsibility of the union to ensure that state governments, they are run as per the constitution of India. And agar aisi koi situation hoti hai, like in this case कि governor was not acting और governor ने मतलब basically कोई action नहीं लिया जो भी bills उनको send किए गए, so उस case में it is the responsibility of the state government to ensure, to inform the president कि ऐसी ऐसी situation है and the government is not basically approving the bills, or it is not taking like any kind of action over the bill that has been sent. So these are the powers which are there to the which are given to the state government under Article 355. Then जो Article 200 है, it provides options to the governor when a bill is presented to him or her after being passed by the legislature. So Article 200 में सारे options mentioned हैं कि governor के पास क्या possible options है जब एक bill send किया जाता है. And these options they are, so options है या तो आप assent दे दो bill को, या आप withhold कर लो assent, या आप उस bill को वापस से भेज सकते हो to the assembly to reconsider it, or you can send the bill to the president also for the consideration. So ये सारे options है जो governor के पास available है under Article 200 of the Constitution. So in case the assembly reconsiders the bill as per the request of the governor under the third option, he has to give the assent even if the assembly passes it again without accepting any of the suggestions of the governor. So अगर exactly same bill भी state assembly वापस से send करती है second time to the governor, तो governor के पास कोई option नहीं है, then in that particular case government basically governor के ऊपर binding हो जाता है कि assent आपको देना ही पड़ेगा. तो बट आप इनडेफिनेटली किसी बिल के ऊपर बैठ नहीं सकते हो, मतलब कोई एक्शन नहीं ले सकते हो, ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन नहीं प्रोवाइड करता है, जो कि अभी सिचुएशन है. एंड this is like only acting against the constitutional direction. So this is in a way violating constitution. It is ultravires the constitution. So ye power, basically it is kind of a discretionary power, but this is not there with the governor, and in neither the constitution gives this power to the governor of any state. So a judicial pronouncement on this matter is needed to eliminate the confusion regarding this thing. So isse regarding confusion hai, and governors, they feel कि they have this power कि like they can indefinitely sit on any particular bill, but ना तो constitution में ये चीज mentioned है and ना अभी तक ऐसी कोई clear judicial pronouncement आई है, कोई judgment आई है from the judiciary. तो इसलिए there is this confusion over this thing, and that's what basically the author of this article is also demanding कि एक clear judicial verdict भी होना चाहिए, judicial judgment भी होनी चाहिए over this. Now coming to the model in United Kingdom. So as regards the option of withholding the assent, a plain reading of Article 200, it suggests that theoretically governor can do so. But question is whether the governor should withhold the assent to a bill passed by the legislature or not. So main question यही है कि क्या गवर्नर के पास ये पावर है, या अगर नहीं भी है तो क्या होनी चाहिए या नहीं होनी चाहिए टू विदहोल्ड द असेंट टू अ पास विदहोल्ड असेंट टू द बिल जो लेजिस्लेचर ने पास किया होता है, एंड इट इज बीन सेंट टू द गवर्नर फॉर द फाइनल असेंट. बट अगर हम आर्टिकल 200 की वी जस्ट गो थ्रू द प्लेन रीडिंग, तो ऐसा लगता है थ्योरेटिकली उसको रीड करने के बाद कि गवर्नर के पास ये पावर है, बट ये क्लियरली मेंशन नहीं है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में. सो बी क्लियर विद दैट एंड डू नॉट गेट कंफ्यूज्ड हियर. एंड इस क्वेश्चन को एड्रेस करने के लिए we'll have a look at the system in UK, whose model of government it was adopted by our constitution. And D.D. Basu in his commentaries on the constitution ये भी बोला था कि that position of governor in this respect is that of the sovereign in England. So basically in a way we can say कि it has been taken from the UK, the system that is followed in UK. So in theory, the sovereign can refuse to give his assent, but this right has not been exercised since the reign of Queen Anne. So UK में ये नहीं follow की जाती है, and it has been like very long time जब like Queen Anne के time से it has not been exercised. So the veto could now only be exercised on ministerial advice, and no government would veto the bills for which it was responsible. So the question of crucial importance ये है whether Article 200, that is the governor can withhold his assent to a bill in exercise of his discretionary powers or not. So or whether he can do so only on the advice of the Council of Ministers. So under Article 154 of the Constitution, the governor can exercise his executive powers only on the advice of the Council of Ministers. So जो भी decision लिए जाते हैं as per Article 154 as it is written, they are on the basis of जो भी एडवाइस रहती है एग्जीक्यूटिव पावर की, बेसिकली काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स की. So accordingly, governor has to act. So there is a view कि governor can withhold the assent to a bill only on ministerial advice. एक ये view भी है. But some experts ask as to why Council of Ministers should advise the governor to withhold the assent after the bill it has been passed by the assembly. तो इसका तो थोड़ा कुछ logic समझ नहीं आया कि मतलब अगर हम ये बोल रहे हैं कि गवर्नर वुड बी एक्टिंग ऑन द एड एंड एडवाइस ऑफ द काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स, बट बिल तो अल्टीमेटली लाइक स्टेट असेंबली पास करके भेज रही है, तो व्हाई मतलब ऐसा क्यों इंस्टेंस होगा कि काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स कभी ये बोलेगी कि गवर्नर को कि इस बिल को आप असेंट ना दो. सो इस चीज का तो यहाँ पे तो बेसिकली हम बोल सकते हैं कॉन्ट्राडिक्शन हो गया. So if the government did not want to proceed with the bill, it could withdraw it at any stage of consideration by the assembly. So अगर government चाहती नहीं है वो bill pass होना चाहिए, तो state assembly वाली stage में ही उसको pass नहीं होने देगी, क्योंकि majority the government enjoy करती है. Similarly, if the government wanted to repeal it after it becomes an act, it could have it repealed by the house also. सो गवर्नमेंट के पास और भी बाकी ऑप्शंस है, वो इतना वेट ही क्यों करेगी कि इतने एफर्ट्स लेने के बाद फाइनली वो गवर्नर को बोलेगी या एडवाइस देगी कि आप इस बिल को असेंट ना दीजिए. सो इस चीज का भी कोई सेंस नहीं बनता है. Then we come to the issue of justiciability. Finally, it is necessary to look at the question of justiciability of the whole issue of assent by the governor. So, D.D. Basu, quoting the judgments of the Supreme Court, says that it is not justiciable. So, one of the judgments in the Purushottam number 3 versus the state of Kerala 1962 ki judgment hai. So, the issue was that that was decided in this case was that a bill which is pending with the governor does not lapse on the resolution of the assembly. So is judgment में या इस case में this was the question कि जो bill that has been already passed by the state assembly and जो governor के साथ pass pending है वो lapse नहीं होगा अगर ऐसी कोई situation होती है कि state assembly dissolve हो जाती है. So judgment क्या थी? So this judgment, it does not deal with the justiciability of the process of the assent, but मतलब हाँ अगेन यहाँ पे जस्टिसबिलिटी वाला एलिमेंट नहीं आया. देन वी हैव अनदर जजमेंट ऑफ 1983 डील्स विद द पावर ऑफ द गवर्नर टू रिजर्व अ बिल फॉर द कंसिडरेशन द प्रेसिडेंट. सो यहाँ पे इस चीज की बात की गई. सो कोर्ट हेल्ड दैट governor reserves a bill for the consideration of the president in exercise of his discretion. So ये एक discretionary power है गवर्नर के पास, जब गवर्नर किसी पर्टिकुलर बिल को withhold करता है for the assent of the president. So ये completely it is up to the governor to decide this. So court cannot go into the question of whether it was necessary for the governor to reserve the bill for the consideration of the president or not. So court इस question में नहीं जा सकता है कि जो governor का decision था कि basically president would be taking the final call or not. So इस चीज पे कि इस particular bill में ये चीज required थी या नहीं, इस चीज में judiciary can't go into that. So thus this case too does not deal with the justice. So इस case में भी मतलब justiciability of the assent वाली चीज नहीं थी. So the issue that is agitating state government is the non-decision या indecision on the part of the governor on a bill that is passed by the assembly. So on the question whether government it can challenge the inaction of the governor in a court of law, the answer seems to be in the affirmative. So इस case में basically क्या इस issue को government जुडिशरी में लेके जा सकती है या नहीं, यहाँ पे भी एक क्वेश्चन है, बट इट सीम्स कि इट कैन, क्योंकि how would things go forward then अगर गवर्नर किसी एक पर्टिकुलर बिल पे बैठे हैं not taking any action, तो what is the solution या फिर how things would be moving forward. So government कुछ कर नहीं सकती है and governor is not doing anything, so obviously things are taken to the judiciary. So the framers of the constitution, they would never have imagined that governors they would sit on the bills indefinitely without exercising any of the options जो उनको article 200 देता है. And this is a new development which needs new solutions within the framework of the constitution. So it falls to the Supreme Court to fix a reasonable time frame for the governors to take a decision on a bill which is passed by assembly in the larger interest of federalism in the country. So abhi, this is the thing which is lacking, कि there is no proper timeline, proper time नहीं है जो constitution mention करते हैं, या कभी कोई ऐसी सुप्रीम कोर्ट जजमेंट नहीं रही जहाँ पे एक टाइम पीरियड फिक्स किया गया हो फॉर द गवर्नर्स टू टेक एक्शन ऑन अ बिल दैट हैज बीन सेंट टू इट बाय व्हिच इज पास्ड बाय द स्टेट legislature. So here we talked about three important constitutional articles. यहाँ पे हमने यूके का मेंशन भी किया. Then we talked about the element of justiciability and कुछ सुप्रीम कोर्ट की जजमेंट्स भी देखी. So coming to the next topic, here we are seeing that Wagner Group's actions in Africa. So सबसे पहले हमारे लिए ये important है कि Wagner Group है क्या? Then in which countries in Africa is the Wagner Group active? कौन सी countries में active है? What explains its dynamic relations with different countries across African continent? And what has the UN said about this group? वो important हो जाता है. What role does Russia play in the activities of this group? So all these questions will be dealt with and we'll try to find the answers to all these questions. So सबसे पहले यहाँ पे मैप दे रखा है, मैप को समझने की कोशिश करते हैं एंड डेफिनेटली मैप्स बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है एग्जामिनेशन के लिए. मैप से हर साल कुछ ना कुछ क्वेश्चन जरूर आता है. सो मर्सनरीज इन अफ्रीका, द विग्नर ग्रुप एक ये रशिया का पैरामिलिट्री ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है. इट हैज बीन इन्वॉल्व्ड इन मल्टीपल काउंटर मिलिट्री ऑपरेशंस अफ्रीका में. So while legally the group, it is not a Russia-based private military company नहीं है, and it works closely with the Russian security apparatus, but it is not, Russia-based private military company. तो रशियन पैरामिलिट्री ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जरूर है जो रशिया की सिक्योरिटी अपैरेटस के साथ क्लोजली वर्क करता है. सो कौन सी कंट्रीज में इट इज मिलिटरली एंड पॉलिटिकली एंगेज्ड? द कंट्रीज विच आर हाईलाइटेड इन येलो कलर, those are the ones. So यूक्रेन के आसपास की ज्योग्राफी ऑब्वियसली खुद ही इम्पोर्टेंट है. सीरिया इम्पोर्टेंट है. देन यहाँ पे डेफिनेटली वॉर इज गोइंग ऑन. सुडान में नाउ वॉर स्टार्टेड, सो this is also important. Then we have other countries like Libya, Mali, Mozambique, and then Central African Republic. And jahan pe it is like economically and politically involved, so it includes Cameroon, Burkina Faso, Kenya, and Madagascar. So these are the countries jahan pe wo economically and politically involved hai. So yahan pe proper timeline de rakhi hai. I guess that is not so important for us. And so Mali में 2021 में the group was deployed to provide security against Islamic militants. So basically, for like from the perspective of security, this group is deployed in different countries. And इसके अलावा now we'll go into details. So after fighting, it erupted in the Sudan's capital Khartoum. 15th of April say we're seeing questions they have been raised over the involvement of this Wagner group, which has been active in the African countries for years. So what is Wagner group? It is a Russian paramilitary organization, which is headed by this person. Though it has been reportedly engaged in the counter militancy operations in Africa, its involvement is believed to have a more extensive scope covering even the political, economic, and military fields. So there have also been reports of the group supplying arms and weapons also and training the regional forces and fighting the jihadist threats. So काफी तरीके से it has been helping the countries, and despite its involvement in the Russia-Ukraine war also, Wagner Group's presence in Africa that has continued. And by siding with the domestic actors in a civil war situation, the group's actions, they have impacted the democratic process in Africa, because the group is also involved with the civilian population. So additionally, the West, it has been raising concerns over the human rights violations and the abuse of civilians related to the Wagner group's presence in Africa. So ये दो concerns है जो PES ने highlight की है कि it is leading to human rights violations and secondly abuse of civilians. So how active is this Wagner group in Africa? So it has been active in Sudan, Mali, Central African Republic, Mozambique, Libya. So ये African continent में these are the countries जहाँ पे Wagner group is active. So किस तरीके का काम कर रहा है Wagner group? It is trying to provide like direct support to the authoritarian governments, supporting rival leadership engaged in the internal wars, filling the void which is created by withdrawal of the French military engagement, taking part in the resource exploitation also. So जो authoritarian governments है उसको ये group support करता है. तो that's how West का concern है कि it is disrupting the democratic process in Africa. And उसके अलावा the group, it presents itself as a security provider to a few governments, mostly authoritarian governments जो हैं Africa में, उनको it is providing security apparatus. उसके अलावा it has also been supporting rival leaders which are engaged in the civil war. So Sudan में it began the deployments during the former president's rule 2017 के around, and the group's ties with Sudan aimed at guarding the mineral resources, notably जो gold mines है वहाँ पे, and it supported the Bashir's government against international opposition. So it played a direct role in suppressing the Sudanese uprising in 2019 that toppled Bashir's regime. And Sudan में Russia has recently forged a strong relationship with the Rapid Support Forces and its commander. And the latter is rival leader which is fighting against the Sudanese army. So Russia is also involved, and then this Wagner group is also involved in Sudan. So different countries में जो role है that has been mentioned. उसके अलावा what is the group's end game in Africa? The primary goal of this group is to gain access to natural resources. So indirectly basically जिसका main aim यही है to gain access to natural resources. हालांकि it is saying कि it is providing security apparatus and it is supporting different countries. So वो एक बहाना है we can say, but main जो aim है that is to gain access to natural resources. So numerous reports हैं जो ये बोलती हैं that have referred to Russia's objectives in securing access to the Africa's rich natural resources. So ultimately fight is cheese के लिए हो रही है, and the Wagner Group's presence and moves make up one of the strategies to achieve this objective for the country. So ultimately Russia जो चाहता है, it is being said कि Russia एक तरीके से is misusing बोल सकते हो this Wagner group to gain access to the rich natural resources which are found in Africa. And secondly, Russia sees the Wagner group as an instrument of diplomacy in Africa also. So Russian strategy in Africa comes with minimal cost economically, but with heavy political returns. And finally, Russia's access to the African mineral deposits is believed to be providing crucial financial support to continue the war in Ukraine also. So indirectly, you can see how it is linked even with the Russia-Ukraine war. So for Russia, strong ties with African countries mean a pipeline of influence for the Russia's war in Ukraine. So Africa के लिए क्या implications होने वाली हैं? So for African countries, increasing dependency on the Wagner mercenaries implies more violence, intimidation, and uncertainties. So जितना ज़्यादा there would be the involvement, उतनी ज़्यादा chances of violence रहेगा, intimidation, and uncertainties would rise. So as per a UN report, it said that private military groups, particularly जो Wagner group है, they have violently harassed the people and committed sexual violence also. So France, US, international human rights organizations, they accuse the mercenaries of extrajudicial killings in Central African Republic and Mali. So this is actually one of the realities. Secondly, the group poses a threat to even the democratic governance in France because it is supporting the authoritarian governments. उसके अलावा what is the status of the Wagner group globally and inside Russia? So according to the UN's International Convention against the recruitment, use, financing and training of the mercenaries, the states they should bear the responsibility for the activities of the mercenaries who violate the principles of international law which threatened the sovereign equality, political independence, territorial integrity of the states and self-determination of the people. So legally अगर हम बात करें तो Wagner it is not a Russia-based private military company नहीं है, though it works closely with the Russian security apparatus. So private mercenary groups they are illegal in Russia. So however, in 2018, Putin recognized the group saying that the Wagner group has the right to pursue its interest anywhere in the world as long as they do not break the Russian law. So this is what Russia is supporting. And yeah, so that's the situation right now. And iske alawa, as I told you, key map is very important for us. So यहाँ पे जो concept है that is humidity, relative humidity, and उसके अलावा the wet bulb temperature. So just go through the concept जो हमारे लिए important है. from the examination perspective. So relative humidity, it is important as it factors in the amount of vapor that air can hold at different temperatures. So here in this article, it is explaining how one can calculate it through a simple experiment with the household items and mathematical equations through apps or any devices also. But हमारे लिए सबसे पहले important है the definition of relative humidity. So let's first spot that. अगर has been mentioned. So सबसे पहले इस portion पे आते हैं कि why does relative humidity matter ही क्यों करती है? So on a hot day, our body uses sweat to cool itself. So sweat is released via our skin to the surface. So there the liquid evaporates, and when water changes the phase from liquid to vapor, it absorbs heat from the surface on which it lies. So that's how our body gets cooled. So when sweat evaporates, it absorbs the heat from the skin, leading to the cooling effect. So higher is the relative humidity of the air, the more it is filled with moisture. So जितनी ज़्यादा relative humidity होगी of the air, उतना ज़्यादा moisture content होगा. And when air already contains a lot of moisture, so it won't easily accept more of moisture. So उस case में evaporation slow हो जाता है. So this means that the sweat on your skin cannot evaporate in such a situation जहाँ पे relative humidity बहुत ज़्यादा high है, या जब moisture content air में already बहुत ज़्यादा high है, तो उस case में the rate of evaporation slows down. So at the same time, the body keeps sweating as it is still expecting to cool itself, but sweating continue रहती है, and as a result, if the relative humidity it is high, you can sweat on a hot day even when you are sitting still while your body keeps accumulating heat. So this can quickly become dangerous also. So relative humidity of around 30% to 60%, it is generally considered to be comfortable, but beyond it, it's kind of dangerous thing. So environments that have lower levels than this typically use the humidifiers to increase the humidity. So जहाँ पे the level is higher, a fan will help move the air around you and help the sweat evaporate better. So अगर relative humidity के case में you are able to get like a lot of windy situation, तो उस situation में basically जो आपका sweat release हो रहा body से, it can evaporate easily. So both the cases में drinking water is important. So what does relative humidity implies physically? So जब warm air है, warm air it can hold more moisture than cooler air. That's true. So at the same absolute humidity levels, relative humidity of warmer air will be lower than that of the cooler air. So obviously अगर हम relative humidity की बात करें, warmer air में relative humidity ज़्यादा होगी than the cooler air, and it is like saying कि two vessels they can hold the same amount of water, just that the bigger vessel will be less full than the smaller vessel. So this is why, for example, while Chennai it had an absolute humidity बात करें तो it was 70%. Its relative humidity was lower around 60% because it had an ambient temperature of around 32 degrees Celsius. So the change in the capacity for the moisture as the air warms is also non-linear, meaning it does not increase by the same amount as the air warms. So उसमें linear relationship नहीं है. So आप measure कैसे कर सकते हो relative humidity? So there are like few ways to measure it. One is to conduct a simple experiment with the household items. Another is to use maths. Third is to use app or a device. So here the process has been explained. So यहाँ पे सबसे पहले the experiment, you need two mercury thermometers, some cotton, rubber bands, and access to cold water. So first of all, make sure that dono thermometers they show the same reading under a fan like condition. And next you need to soak the cotton in cold water and wrap it around the bulb of one of the thermometers with a rubber band. Uske baad hold this thermometer under the fan such that water from the cotton evaporates and record the thermometer reading after 5 minutes. So This is the process, and hold up the other thermometer in the air and record its reading after 5 minutes. So you will thus have the wet bulb temperature and the dry bulb temperatures इस experiment के through, and then you need to subtract these two readings जो आपको मिलेगी wet bulb and the dry bulb temperature. So जिस thermometer पे आपने cotton wrap किया था, that becomes the wet bulb temperature जो भी आपको reading मिलेगी, and दूसरा वाला simply that is a dry bulb temperature. So आपको temperature difference मिल जाएगा, and then you finally use the relative humidity chart on the right. जो ये this is the chart, this is the relative humidity chart to get the relative humidity value. For example, अगर difference was 6 degrees Celsius and the dry bulb temperature was 28 degrees Celsius, so the relative humidity would have been 59%. So आपको पता होना चाहिए कि चार्ट कैसे यूज करते हैं. So dry bulb temperature अगर 6 degree, basically dry bulb temperature was 28 degrees Celsius. So यहाँ पे 28 तो मेंशन नहीं है. Basically I don't know कि इसको आप exactly कैसे यूज करते हो, बट इतना हमें डिटेल में जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. बस आपको इतना पता होना चाहिए कि ड्राई बल्ब टेम्परेचर, वेट बल्ब टेम्परेचर क्या होते हैं, बेसिकली क्या तरीका है ऑफ कैलकुलेटिंग द रिलेटिव ह्यूमिडिटी. सो अगर हम मैथ्स की बात करें, मैथ्स में डेफिनेटली कोई फॉर्मूला जरूर होगा. तो mathematical method में there are two ways among others to estimate relative. So one is simpler method and दूसरे में थोड़ा और complex हो जाता है. तो first way आप divide करोगे actual vapor pressure by the saturated vapor pressure, and vapor pressure it is the amount of moisture that air contains. So उसको बोलते हैं हम vapor pressure, जितना amount of moisture air contains. So उसमें हम actual vapor pressure calculate कर लेंगे and saturated vapor pressure. So saturated value it is the maximum possible amount जो air as a moisture hold कर सकती है. So that is saturation level reach कर लिया. Then you also require dew point, so that you can get online, and that's the thing. तो आपको ये सारी वैल्यूज चाहिए होती है, एंड उसके अलावा हाइग्रोमीटर्स होते हैं, दे आर अवेलेबल इन द फिजिकल एज वेल एज ऑनलाइन स्टोर्स. अगर आपको लाइक डिवाइसेस यूज करके यू नीड टू कैलकुलेट द रिलेटिव ह्यूमिडिटी. सो हाइग्रोमीटर इट्स एन इंस्ट्रूमेंट दैट मेजर्स ह्यूमिडिटी. सो देन यू ऑल्सो हैव साइक्रोमीटर्स. So यहाँ पे devices mentioned हैं, that's how you can use them, and through them you can like calculate the relative humidity. So hygrometer use किया जाता है humidity calculate करने के लिए. So wet bulb temperature matter क्यों करता है? So more direct way to understand the implications of relative humidity for your well-being is in the form of the wet bulb temperature, which is also known as the adiabatic saturation temperature. So it is the lowest temperature or surface like आपकी skin it can reach when the water evaporates from it. So wet bulb temperature is the lowest temperature जब आपकी skin से कोई evaporation like sweat evaporate हो रहा है, तो that is the wet bulb temperature, and this is also known as I told you, adiabatic saturation temperature. So जो wet bulb temperature है that is equal to the dry bulb temperature when the relative humidity is 100%. So यहाँ पे हमने बहुत सारे concept की बात करी है. एक बार वीडियो को pause करके फिर से रिवाइंड करके फिर से देखना, बिकॉज बहुत सारी चीजें डू नॉट गेट कंफ्यूज्ड है. सो यहाँ पे बात कर रहे हैं कि जो वेट बल्ब टेम्परेचर है दैट इज इक्वल टू ड्राई बल्ब टेम्परेचर जब रिलेटिव ह्यूमिडिटी 100% है. सो दैट इज द वेट बल्ब टेम्परेचर. एंड सो रिलेटिव ह्यूमिडिटी जब 100% है एंड यू आर कैलकुलेटिंग ड्राई बल्ब टेम्परेचर, तो एक्चुअली यू आर कैलकुलेटिंग द वेट बल्ब टेम्परेचर. ठीक है. So moving forward, we see कि wet bulb temperature, it's in an environment of around 32 to 35 degrees Celsius or higher, it can be quickly lethal. So wet bulb temperature in environment of 32 to 35 degrees Celsius or higher, it can be quickly lethal even if you are not doing any physical activity or are in the shade. Okay, at least one study it has shown that even a wet bulb temperature of more than 29 degrees Celsius, it can be dangerous. So अगर wet bulb temperature around 32 से 35 degrees Celsius आ रहा है तो it can be very lethal. And climate crisis, it is rendering heat waves more common. Obviously heat waves बहुत common हो रही हैं and more frequent हो रही हैं, more spread out हो रही हैं, more potent हो रही है over the Indian subcontinent. So as a study it was published, we see May 2022 में it says कि whether today's most impactful heat waves they could have occurred in a pre-industrial climate. Traditionally, a central focus of attribution research is fast becoming an obsolete question. So the next frontier for attribution science is to inform adaptation decision making in the face of unprecedented future heat. So adaptation decision making बहुत important है. One way to adapt is to keep an eye on the relative humidity, drink lots of water, and cool yourself. So that is one of the way forward. कल हमने केशवनंद भारती जजमेंट का प्रॉपर एवोल्यूशन देखा था. उसके बाद हमने ये भी बात करी थी कि कौन सी ऐसी जजमेंट्स रही जहां पे द बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर डॉक्ट्रिन वाज यूज्ड आफ्टर दिस जजमेंट. सो दैट वाज लाइक एक्सट्रीमली इंपॉर्टेंट डिस्कशन था कल के न्यूज़पेपर में. तो डू गो थ्रू दैट. एंड since this judgment completes 50 years, so naturally it becomes very important for us. सो जो न्यूक्लियर पावर प्लांट्स है इंडिया में, वन ऑफ देम जैतपुर पावर प्रोजेक्ट. सो आपको पता होना चाहिए जितने भी इंडिया में टोटल हैं एंड कहाँ कहाँ पे लोकेटेड है, कौन सी कंट्री के साथ वी आर हैविंग अ कोलैबोरेशन. So nuclear liability issue is not yet resolved for the Jaipur project, and this is in like relation with the French government. So Jaipur wala project जो है that is India and France, and Kudankulam power plant जो है that is with India and Russia. So that's located in Tamil Nadu. So आप सबकी location find out कर सकते हो. So जो Vibrant Villages plan है वो merge किया जाएगा with PM Gati Shakti. So one of the objectives of the program is to stop the migration of the border population. जब हम Vibrant Villages program की बात करते हैं, so it aims to develop infrastructure and open up villages along with China border to tourists. That will be now integrated with PM Gati Shakti mega project. So digital platform of Gati Shakti project, it brings 16 ministries like railways, highways together for integrated planning and coordinated implementation of infrastructure connectivity projects and allows departments to break the operational silos. So PM Gati Shakti basically focuses upon infrastructural connectivity projects, and कहीं ना कहीं जो वाइब्रेंट विलेजेस प्रोग्राम है या प्लान है दैट इज आल्सो इन अ वे डूइंग दैट. एंड अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट ensuring कि we attract more tourists to the border villages of India and also stopping the migration of the border population. So जो भास्कराचार्य नेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट फॉर स्पेस एप्लीकेशंस एंड जियो इन्फॉर्मेटिक्स रहेगा which is there in Gujarat. It has been roped in to provide satellite images and GIS mapping of the projects that will be taken up under the scheme. So it would be providing the satellite images so as to have a look and assess the progress on the development regarding it. So malaria, it is said to be a notifiable disease across India, even if we are seeing कि cases कम हो रहे हैं. So यहाँ पे हमें पता होना चाहिए कि notifiable disease कौन सी कैटेगरी है एंड कब किसी डिजीज को इस लिस्ट में इंक्लूड किया जाता है. तो मलेरिया इट इज ऑल सेट टू बिकम अ नोटिफाइबल डिजीज अक्रॉस इंडिया, जहाँ पे बिहार, अंडमान एंड निकोबार आइलैंड्स, मेघालय, they are too in the process of putting the vector-borne disease in this category. So this will then require by law that cases be reported to the government authorities. So जो भी diseases they are a part of the notifiable disease, जितने भी instances होंगे of that particular disease, it would become important by law and it would be mandatory कि आपको वो चीजें, वो केसेस, सारे केसेस गवर्नमेंट को रिपोर्ट करने इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाएंगे. So currently malaria it is a notifiable disease in 33 states and UTs in India. So confirming the development, senior health minister official said that this is part of India's vision to be malaria free by 2027 and to eliminate the disease by 2030. So Health Ministry initiated a joint action plan with the Ministry of Tribal Affairs for malaria elimination in the tribal areas. So India, it was the only high burden and high impact country in Southeast Asia region to report a decline in malaria cases in 2020 as compared to 2019. And India witnessed 85% decline in malaria cases and 83% decline in the deaths during 2015 to 2022. So India के केस में we are comparatively ahead compared to the Southeast Asian countries जब हम मलेरिया डिजीज बर्डन की बात करते हैं एंड कमिंग टू द वर्ल्ड पेज सो यूएई का होप स्पेस प्रोब इट ऑफर्स नेवर बिफोर व्यू ऑफ मार्स मून सो जो होप है एक तो ये पता होना चाहिए कौन सी कंट्री का है तो इट इज ऑफ यूएई इसके अलावा it has revealed Mars' smaller moon Deimos in an unprecedented detail, shedding new light on the origin of the mysterious lumpy satellite. So the probe, that is the Arab world's first interplanetary mission, it has been orbiting Mars for 2 years. So Hope space probe, it has been sent to Mars by the country UAE. सो यहाँ पे हम चैट जीपीटी की इतनी बात कर रहे हैं अब नई तरीके से डिफरेंट कंट्रीज दे आर कमिंग अप विद देयर ओन फॉर्म ऑफ चैट जीपीटी सो यहाँ पे जो जनरेटिव आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस वाला टॉपिक है ओपन आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस ये सारी चीजें इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाती हैं एंड प्लीज डू गो थ्रू द concept of generative artificial intelligence and how it is like different from the normal artificial intelligence technology. So Bangladesh lists out its priorities for Indo-Pacific. So peacekeeping, peace building, and counter-terrorism initiatives, they are high on its agenda. So it will aim for inclusive development by strengthening the free, transparent, rules-based international order as far as Indo-Pacific is concerned. And definitely this is a very, very important region for even India and other countries. So जो भी developments होती रहती है regarding Indo-Pacific, we keep discussing them. And we've already taken up the Wegener group in detail today. Coming to the business page, here we are seeing. So Adani Ports would be going ahead with a bond buyback of around $130 million. So the debt buyback, it is the company's first since the Hindenburg report, and the ports to cooking oil conglomerate hopes to regain investor confidence by reassuring them about its liquidity position. So this buyback, it is intended to reassure the investors of the company's liquidity position. And जो पहले situation थी before the release of this group, as far as the Adani group of companies is concerned, they are still not back to that situation right now, because obviously then investors का जो confidence है वो इतनी जल्दी we can't boost that back to the normal and restore the status quo. So उसमें time लगता है and Adani group different तरीके से it is trying keep people they be rest assured as far as liquidity situation की बात करें तो. So in this current financial year, we are expecting कि जो credit growth है that is likely to moderate to 10%. And the crucial non-food loans growth is expected to slip to 10% from more than 15% as per a Japanese brokerage. So Russian oil cuts OPEC's share of Indian market to 22-year low. So OPEC's share of India's oil imports, it fell in 2022-23 to the lowest in at least 22 years, as we see कि हमने रशिया से जो जिस लेवल पे जिस स्केल पे क्रूड ऑयल इंपोर्ट किया है दैट इज सर्ज्ड मैसिवली. सो उसके वजह से जो शेयर ऑफ कंट्रीज या जो शेयर ऑफ क्रूड ऑयल इंपोर्ट फ्रॉम ओपेक था इंडिया का दैट हैज बीन एट 22 years लो. एंड कल ही हमने बात करी थी टॉप 4 कंट्रीज जो इंडिया को क्रूड ऑयल सप्लाई कर रही है फ्रॉम द पास्ट 7 months data. So I would repeat that again. Number 1 पे we had Russia, number 2 पे it was Saudi Arabia, third पे it was Iraq, fourth पे UAE. So ये order and chronology is very important, and that's the thing. So यहाँ पे भी mentioned है कि Russia overtook Iraq to emerge as the top oil supplier of India. So that's the development as far as crude oil imports for India is concerned. Coming to the Mint newspapers, so सबसे पहले हम already इस चीज को discuss कर चुके हैं regarding the new space policy of 2023. So will this policy give a lift off to India's space business or not? So first challenge or concern है that is the space sector has been facing is the lagging competition here. So India has fewer space assets when compared to key countries. So annual budget की बात करें in $billion, so USA में it is highest, followed by China. India का it is just $1.7 billion. So USA का it is 30, China का it is 14, and number of space assets की भी बात करें तो India it is very lagging compared to US and China. So India wants its share in the global space economy to grow from 2%, which is the share right now, to 10%. So global space economy mein, we want our share to increase from 2% to 10%. And the success of the Indian Space Research Organization, it has spawned a number of private players, making the recently announced Indian Space Policy 2023 critical. So definitely it's a policy important है. So what does the space policy seek to achieve? क्या target levels हैं? क्या goal and objective है of this new space policy? So 2020 में the government liberalized the space sector and it enabled large-scale private sector participation in the space program. And उससे पहले it was completely in the hands of ISRO. So 2022 से we can say कि Indian space sector steps have been taken to liberalize it. उसके अलावा it did so far after realizing कि private sector needs to have a bigger role if India has to augment its space capabilities. Definitely completely ISRO can't do everything, तो private sector role भी important जाता है, and also to have a flourishing commercial space business. So for that private sector needs to come in and become a global power in the sector and use these capabilities for the socio-economic development and also from the security perspective. So the updated space policy seeks to provide regulatory certainty to achieve this vision of creating a thriving space ecosystem. So obviously उसके लिए हमें regarding regulation कैसे चीजें regulate की जाएंगी, we need to have clarity regarding that, and that's what this new space policy also provides for. So where does the space program stand right now? जब हम इंडिया की space program की बात करते हैं तो ever since India launched its first sounding rocket in November 1963, its space program it has come a long way. And ISRO it has undertaken more than 120 spacecraft missions, 90 odd satellite launch missions, and it has put over 385 foreign satellites in the orbits. So its 2 satellite launchers, that is PSLV and GSLV, they are considered to be reliable, low-cost launch options for the world. And still its space assets, they are at 80 pales before the US 1650, and China's over 450 satellites in the orbit. So India's share in the $450 billion global market, it is just 2% today. So we aim to increase this to 10%. So recent क्या reforms हुए हैं and how are they helping us? So reforms that were announced in 2020 ensured that over 100 new companies, they have entered this sector. So since 2020 say we see कि थोड़ा liberalization के लिए steps were taken. So post that we are seeing कि over 100 new companies, they have entered the Indian space sector, basically which are private in nature. So some of them like Skyroot, Aerospace, Zroof Space, the Gantara, Pixel, all of these, they have already tasted the success. And in 2022, these companies, they have raised over $100 million, which is more than what has been raised cumulatively till 2021. So definitely जो reforms किए गए 2022 में, they are helping us. And what will ISRO's role be now after these reforms? And we are trying to attract more of the private sector, private companies into the Indian space sector. So ISRO का क्या role रहेगा? So ISRO, as per the space policy, it will focus primarily on research and development of the new space technologies and their applications, and for expanding the human understanding of the outer space. So ये main role रहने वाला है as far as ISRO is concerned. So India's space program, it will transition from ISRO dominated to being ISRO enabled. So these are the keywords. Do remember them. ISRO dominated पहले था pre-2020, and now we are ensuring ISRO enabled. So it has moved its commercial operations to New Space India Limited, which is a public sector unit, and Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center. It has begun regulating the space sector. So in space, it is the new regulator, and we are having New Space India Limited, जो commercial operations को handle कर रहा है. So what do the private companies say and what do they feel? So the policy, it has been received well. Private players, including the startups, they call it forward-looking. So like they are appreciating the new policy, and it lays down the role of ISRO, InSpace, and other entities also. So we are like having much more clarity, and that's what it will boost the confidence of even the private sector in the Indian space sector. So what excites them the most is the flexibility the policy allows, given the rapid changes the sector typically sees, and also the technology. So it permits case-by-case authorization or even approval from InSpace to engage in the space activity, even when it does not align with the policy. So that's like that they say it is critical for India to achieve its objective of becoming a space superpower. So IT services sector's new people problem. So attrition rates, they are now dropping, but they are still high at 20%. So that is one concern. And operating margins, they are lower amid the cost pressure. So margins low hai, but cost pressures, they are still the same, for we can say. And that is a challenge which the IT services sector is facing as of now. So we'll not go into much details of it, but like thoda sa pata hona would be sufficient for us. Now let's take up the Financial Express. So in Financial Express, let's see what is important for us here. On the front page, I did not spot anything important. So rural demand, it is recovering back, and investment activity, it is also been seen picking up. So consumer deals, they are like, although they are on a slow track in 2023, but rural demand, it is reviving back and it is recovering. So hunt on for the nations willing to sell oil at discount. So that's what India is looking for. And we are like moving forward in order to ensure that we diversify our crude oil importing partners. So like the government is saying they were not stopped from buying the Russian oil above the $60. So $60 was the price cap which was imposed on the Russian crude oil by the Western world because of the war in Ukraine. So here we are having the Petroleum and Natural Gas Secretary who's saying, while most of the Russian crude oil imports to India, it is at below the cap, those who buy above $60 per barrel level, they take the recourse to alternative methods for settling the payment, some of which get delayed at times also. But government is very clear that we were not stopped from buying even above $60 mark. So some banks, they were hesitant in settling the oil purchase from Russia. So इसकी डिटेल में जाना इतना इम्पोर्टेंट नहीं है, बट डेफिनेटली जो रशिया का शेयर है इन टर्म्स ऑफ प्रोवाइडिंग क्रूड ऑयल टू इंडिया, सो अर्लियर इट वाज लाइक लेस देन 1%, and now it has rose to 34% as of March 2023. So it has replaced Iraq as the top crude oil supplier to India. So इससे पहले Iraq was at number 1, and So that's there. So role of marine sector is supreme in nation building. The National Technology Center for Ports, Waterways and Coast, it will ensure advancement in the field of maritime technology, as well as modernization and upgradation possibilities in the ports. So the center was recently inaugurated by the Prime Minister, which is National Technology Center for Ports, Waterways and Coast. So we are emphasizing here on technology and new developments. So angel tax क्या होता है ये पता होना चाहिए. The norms of it and the valuation guidelines in the works. Circular is likely next month. So we need much more clarity when it comes to angel tax norms. So fresh guidelines for the applicability of the angel tax provisions shall offer clarity on the valuation and the exemption norms क्या हो सकते हैं. And talks are on to ensure that registered startups, they are not impacted by the new provisions, and the tax shall aim to curb the use of unaccounted money for share purchases. Industry is hoping valuation norms would help secure funding. So angel tax, agar simple terms में I explain you, तो basically जो देखो एक तो होता है कि जो स्टार्टअप्स हैं दे हैव टू रेज द फंड, सो फॉर दैट जो फेयर वैल्यू ऑफ द शेयर होती है उससे ऊपर के प्राइस पे अगर दे आर रेजिंग द फंड्स, तो उससे जो एक्स्ट्रा अमाउंट आता है अबव देयर फेयर वैल्यू ऑफ देयर शेयर्स, तो सिर्फ उस पर्टिकुलर अमाउंट के ऊपर एंजल टैक्स इम्पोज किया जाता है. सो दैट इज द थिंग, मतलब फेयर टैक्स, सॉरी, जो फेयर वैल्यू है पर शेयर, उससे हायर प्राइसेस पे अगर आप पैसे रेज करोगे तो दैट वुड अट्रैक्ट एंजल टैक्स. तो एंटी डंपिंग ड्यूटी की भी अगर मैं बात करूं कि कौन से केस में, कौन से सिनेरियो में एंटी डंपिंग ड्यूटी इम्पोज की जाती है, तो इट इज बेसिकली व्हेन जब कोई कंट्री इंडिया में ऐसे गुड्स एक्सपोर्ट कर रही है या फिर इंडिया में हम ऐसे गुड्स इंपोर्ट कर रहे हैं एक ऐसे प्राइस पे जो डोमेस्टिक, बेसिकली जो कंट्री हमें एक्सपोर्ट कर रही है वो अपनी मार्केट में जो प्राइस है उससे भी लोअर प्राइस पे इंडिया में एक्सपोर्ट कर रही है, तो उस केस में एंटी डंपिंग ड्यूटी इम्पोज की जाती है. तो सपोज चाइना हमें कुछ एक्सपोर्ट कर रहा है एंड जो चाइना की मार्केट में उस गुड का प्राइस है उससे भी लोअर प्राइस पे दे आर एक्सपोर्टिंग इट टू इंडिया, तो उस केस में एंटी डंपिंग ड्यूटी इम्पोज की जाती है. क्योंकि फिर ये फील होता है या ये बोला जाता है कि चाइना इंडिया में उस चीज को डंप कर रहा है इतने लोअर प्राइसेस पे, तो ऑब्वियसली जो मार्केट कॉम्पिटिटिवनेस है उस पर इम्पैक्ट होता है. जो इंडिया में डोमेस्टिक मैन्युफैक्चरर्स हैं उनकी कॉम्पिटिटिवनेस पे इम्पैक्ट होता है, क्योंकि चाइना से हमें बहुत सस्ते प्राइस पे अगर उसको इम्पोर्ट कर रहे हैं तो ऑब्वियसली कंज्यूमर्स वुड बी बाइंग दैट. Coming to Indian Express, so let's have a look what is the news thing in Indian Express for us today. So the wrestlers, they are back on the agitation, and let's see what would be the final solution for the allegations that they are leveling against the people. So judges cannot give interviews on cases they are hearing. This is what Supreme Court is saying. So अगर कोई case चल रहा है, if anything is subjudized and उससे regarding कोई particular judge interview नहीं दे सकता है regarding it. So won't come in the way of prop, says CJI, seeks report on the judge's interview. So judges have no business giving interviews to the media on matters pending before them. And the Supreme Court, it has sought a report from the Registrar General of the Calcutta High Court regarding an interview allegedly given by one of its judges, in which he had made some remarks against the Trinamool Congress leader Abhishek Banerjee. So on this, Supreme Court is saying कि कोई judge मीडिया को इंटरव्यू नहीं दे सकता है बिकॉज दैट थिंग इज सब्सिडाइज. So India's reliance on the imported crude oil is at record high of 87.3% in the previous financial year. So India may 87.3% of the crude oil is being imported. So एक ये ऐसा sector है जहाँ पे we are highly like vulnerable to the ग्लोबल चेंजेस या फिर जो भी लाइक अगर ऑब्वियसली क्रूड ऑयल का प्राइस इंटरनेशनली मार्केट में इंक्रीज होगा प्लस एक कार्टल है ओपेक कार्टल विच इज कंट्रोलिंग द प्रोडक्शन द सप्लाई ऑफ क्रूड ऑयल तो उसकी वजह से हाईली इंडिया के ऊपर भी इम्पैक्ट होता है उस चीज का तो हमारा करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट भी मेजरली उसकी वजह से इम्पैक्ट किया जाता है बिकॉज 87% अगर हम इम्पोर्ट करेंगे तो ऑब्वियसली विल बी ससेप्टेबल एंड वल्नरेबल टू द global changes, so rising demand for the fuel and other petroleum products amid the flagging domestic crude oil output, it has resulted in India's reliance on the imported crude increasing to record 87% of the domestic consumption in the previous year. Earlier, it was at 85.5%, and now it has increased to up till 87.3%. तो डोमेस्टिक डिमांड हमें इंक्रीज होती हुई दिखाई दी तो इसलिए जो हमारा इंपोर्ट के ऊपर डिपेंडेंस था वो भी इंक्रीज हुआ क्योंकि जो डोमेस्टिक प्रोडक्शन या आउटपुट था वो कम था सो दैट्स देयर सो इंडिया इट इज द वर्ल्ड्स थर्ड लार्जेस्ट कंज्यूमर ऑफ क्रूड ऑयल. So early 2015 में गवर्नमेंट इट हैड सेट अ टारगेट कि हम जो क्रूड ऑयल इंपोर्ट करते हैं उस पर अपनी रिलायंस कम करेंगे ग्रेजुअली. तो पहला टारगेट था 2022 तक 67% ही हम सिर्फ इंपोर्ट करेंगे. पहले it was 77% in 2013-14 and now you can imagine कि it has increased by almost 10% in the year of 2022-23. However, the efforts they have not yielded results because primarily domestic oil production was stagnant रहा but demand increase होती गई तो उसकी वजह से जो हमारी import के ऊपर reliance थी वो भी increase हुई है. So on the 50th anniversary of the basic structure doctrine that mandates the court needs to review and restrict the parliament's powers to amend the constitution's foundational principles, former Attorney General of India K.K. Venugopal has raised a note of caution. So in an interview, he said that Supreme Court's interpretation of the basic structure doctrine in 2015 National Judicial Appointments Commission case, जो उन्होंने struck down किया, that was basically, let's see, completed here. सो 99th कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट थी जो एनजीएससी को लेके आई थी बट सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने 2015 में स्ट्रक डाउन कर दिया गया इसको. सो कॉमनली इट वाज कॉल्ड एनजीएससी बिल दैट गेव एग्जीक्यूटिव अ फुट इन द डोर ऑन द जजेस अपॉइंटमेंट एंड लेफ्ट द पार्लियामेंट grouping in the dark. So this is what the former attorney general has to say. And so he was in favor of. NJC said that real problem is that if an amendment affects the judiciary, then the decision will be very, very subjective. So these are his personal views and कल हमने पूरा like trace किया था evolution and उसके बाद कहाँ पे ये doctrine use की गई in different cases by the Supreme Court. So that is much more important for us. In this picture, you can see the illuminated view of Khane Khana and Humayun's tomb. So आपको पता होना चाहिए कि like does it have the UNESCO tag or not? UNESCO World Heritage Site है कि नहीं? तो ऑपरेशन कावेरी की हम बात कर चुके हैं. That is regarding evacuating Indians from Sudan. Earth Day celebrated on 22nd of April every year. Apart from this, moving forward, So again, his personal views, KK Venugopal Service. This is a complete article. Like you can read it once, but for us, I don't think so. It's going to be so important. So यहाँ पे Article 32 का mention किया गया है, that is the right to move to Supreme Court by appropriate proceedings if you feel that your fundamental rights has been violated. So only for fundamental rights, if they are violated, you have the right under Article 32, and that is for the Supreme Court. And Article 226 is about the power of the High Courts to certain writs. So NJSC की बात की गई है, concerns over the basic structure, and judicial overreach की बात की गई है, revisiting NJSC. So to mark the 50 years of the basic structure ruling, top court, it launches a web page. So जो भी information इस web page पे available रहेगी, that would be important for us to do visit this web page. यहाँ पे आपको बहुत important information मिल सकती है. And बाकी जो newspaper में आ रही है, वो हम cover कर रहे हैं. So we are seeing overconsumption and overutilization, overexploitation of few fertilizers क्योंकि वो सस्ते अवेलेबल है मार्केट में, तो ऑब्वियसली फार्मर्स प्रेफर करते हैं कि उनकी कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन कम आएंगे तो जो सस्ते फर्टिलाइजर है उनको यूज कर लेंगे. बट उसकी वजह से बहुत सारे चैलेंजेस है दैट वी हैव टू डील विद, एंड वी नीड टू इंश्योर कि एक बैलेंस तरीके से देयर इज अ फर्टिलाइजर बैलेंस जो maintain kiya jaye by the farmers in the fields. So record consumption of the fertilizer, it is the outcome of rampant overuse from underpricing. So a price correction is what is the need of the hour. And iske alawa, so 2010 से we had this nutrient based subsidy scheme for the fertilizers जो 2010 से काम कर रही है. And uske baad, when we had the new government which came in power in 2014, so the government made it mandatory to coat all the urea with the neem oil. So urea based, like neem coated urea, it was also in news and ye UPSC already पूछ चुका है. And that's what was the change. And it replaced the 50 kg bags with 45 kg bags from 2018. And none of these measures or even the much talked about nano urea, it have succeeded in their stated goal of achieving balanced fertilization. So ultimate goal hai to ensure balanced fertilization. And कुछ changes किए गए. नैनो यूरिया के बारे में पता होना चाहिए. नीम कोटेड यूरिया and जो 50 kg bags they were replaced with 45 kg bags. So on the contrary, we are seeing that sales of urea, the primary cause of worsening plant nutrient imbalance and deteriorating soil health, they have crossed an all-time high of 35.7 million tons in 2022-23. So जो government ने efforts लिए, they were insufficient, and कोई ऐसा like we are not seeing any major result of that. So urea consumption, it has gone up by over a third compared to the pre-NBS year of 2019. So far from discouraging nitrogen use at the expense of other primary, second, and micronutrients, farmers, they are over applying urea. So this, when there is clear evidence of declining nitrogen use efficiency and crop yield response to fertilizers, uske baad bhi we are seeing the farmers, they are like, unko itna, they're not aware and they're not so like having this in their mind ki how it is like overutilization over one particular fertilizers would be hampering their income and the yield and the productivity. So the reason for such a skewed nutrient use, it is very simple, क्योंकि जो maximum retail price MRP है यूरिया की, it has been unchanged at rupees 5,628 per ton since November 2012. So prices changed नहीं हुए हैं since 2012 when we talk about urea prices, and given the corresponding per ton MRP of 27,000 for diammonium phosphate. So this is another fertilizer which is available. 34,000 is the price of muriate potash. 28,000 to 31,000 is the price for most complexes. So compared to that, अगर farmers को यूरिया मिल रहा है सिर्फ around 5,600 के around per ton, तो वो इतने expensive fertilizers buy क्यों करेंगे? So that's very logical and simple thing. So because of that, we are seeing the imbalance in fertilizer application. So the various solutions currently जो offer किए गए हैं, that is from the nano urea to incorporation of compounds that reduce ammonia, volatilization and nitrate leaching, skirt the real issue of rampant overuse from underpricing. So इसके alternatives ये है, apart from ensuring कि even pricing में भी changes करना important है. So we saw कि diesel, petrol, LPG prices maybe जो process है that has been changed, and urea it has continued to be a political hot potato for successive governments. So 2012 से यूरिया के prices में कोई भी changes नहीं है, and one cannot expect anything substantial in this regard also, क्योंकि next year we are having the general elections. So there can only be one solution to this problem, which is आप MRP raise करो for urea. So this can be done by first bringing urea under the NBS scheme and nutrient-based subsidy scheme, linking subsidy to the nutrient content of the fertilizers. It wasn't a bad idea, but it failed because NBS excluded urea. So that's why it failed and was implemented only for other fertilizers. So urea को cover नहीं किया nutrient based subsidy scheme में, and that's why it failed, क्योंकि urea के prices change नहीं हुए, वो सस्ते थे compared to other fertilizers. So farmers, they like increase the usage, they increase their dependence upon urea as a fertilizer. So decontrolling the MRP of urea is the solution, and pay a fixed per ton subsidy linked to its nutrient content of 46% nitrogen. So in the long run, even the NBS should go and be replaced by a flat per acre subsidy that could be given for every crop season. So this wouldn't penalize the serious farmer who takes more than one crop a year and at the same time applies fertilizers judiciously also. So these are some of the steps which can be taken in order to correct the situation. So we are seeing that contrary to the claims, real wages जो हैं, they have grown at a fast pace in line with per capita GDP growth. So rural wages, they are basically rising, and यहाँ पे data is also given for the average real growth of the rural wages in India. And तो इतना बस हमें इतना पता होना would be more than sufficient. So recently हमने देखा था, this is a repeat, कि इंडिया में सबसे like first time हुआ है water bodies census. क्यों किया गया है and क्या results निकले, वो हमारे लिए important है. So Ministry of Jal Shakti is responsible for it. So it has released report of India's first water body census, which is a comprehensive data, मतलब कौन सी state में कितने ponds, tanks, lakes, reservoirs बचे हैं. So it's a count of that. So census, it was conducted in 2018-19. It enumerated more than 2.4 million water bodies across all states and UTs. So सबसे पहले water bodies define कैसे की गई हैं. So first census report, it considers key water bodies, all the natural or man-made units which are bounded on all the sides with some or no mancillary work used for storing water for irrigation or other purposes as a water body. So water bodies, they are usually for various types known by different names like tank, reservoir, and ponds. So 7 specific water bodies, they were excluded from the count. That includes oceans and lagoons, river streams, springs, waterfalls, canals, which are free flowing without any bounded storage of the water. So these were excluded. Swimming pools obviously exclude kiye gaye. Covered water tanks created for specific purpose by a family or household for their own consumption, they were also excluded. And a water tank constructed by a factory owner for consumption of water as raw material or consumable, that was also not made a part of the census. And temporary water bodies created by digging for mining and like brick kilns and construction activities, they were excluded. And pakka open water tanks created only for cattle to drink the water, so even these were not. So these are the 7 categories जो census का part नहीं थी. So we are seeing कि census basically क्या इस फाइनल डेटा क्या है, क्या रिजल्ट्स हैं, क्या हमें सीखने को मिलता है या क्या हमें पता चल रहा है थ्रू दिस water body census is that it found कि 1.6% of the enumerated water bodies जो हैं they have been encroached upon, and more than 95% of these they are in rural areas, which is logical because more than 97% of the water bodies covered by the census they were in the rural areas. So इसलिए 95% of the water bodies were in rural areas. In almost 63% the encroached water bodies, less than a quarter of the area was under encroachment, and about 12% water bodies, more than 3/4 of the area was under encroachment. So UP में it had the maximum amount of water bodies. Almost 40% of the water bodies under encroachment were there in UP, followed by Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and there was no encroachment reported from West Bengal, Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, and Chandigarh. Again, यहाँ पे भी same चीज है कि why there is over dependence or over usage of urea in India's farms. So अभी हमने इसको discuss किया है. यहाँ पे again it's a repetition. Failure of NBS की बात की गई है, imbalanced fertilization क्योंकि यूरिया पे over dependence देखने को मिल रहा है, solutions की बात की गई है. तो you can just quickly go through it once, although हम इसको discuss कर चुके हैं. इसके अलावा this is related to cheetah's death, so not so important for us. And जो important facts थे वो हम already discuss कर चुके हैं. Then so India jumps 6 places on the World Bank's Logistic Performance Index. So सबसे पहले ये important fact है कि World Bank इस index को release करता है, and second is that we have jumped by 6 places. So now we are ranked at 38th in 139 countries as a result of significant investment. So सबसे पहले तो PM गति शक्ति है जो logistics cost को कम करने में help करेगा, and इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में वी वर रैंक्ड 47th, इंटरनेशनल शिपमेंट्स में 22nd, लॉजिस्टिक्स कॉम्पिटेंस एंड इक्वालिटी में 48th. So 2014 में India's rank was 54 and in 2018 we have improved by 10 ranks. So PM गति शक्ति इनिशिएटिव है जो 2021 में लॉन्च किया गया to reduce the logistics cost. 2022 में we had the national logistics policy also. Then average dwell time for the containers between May-October 2022, that was 3 days for India and Singapore, but is much better than some of the industrialized countries also. So dwell time for the USA, it is 7 days, Germany के लिए it is 10 days, India में it is only 3 days. And so the index, it measures the ease of establishing reliable supply chain connections and the structural factors. So that's another important thing for today. And इसके अलावा so IMF paper says कि absence of data protection law in India poses privacy risk. So अभी like finally bill की form में है, it is not been like passed by the parliament and president का sign नहीं मिला है, तो अभी it is still in the like processing चल रही है over this data protection law, but उसकी वजह से we are seeing कि because of the absence of it, IMF is saying कि there is a high risk to the privacy of the data of the citizens. And then obviously 2017 में Supreme Court judgment भी थी which said कि privacy is your fundamental right, and then it asked the government to implement a robust regime for data protection. एंड उसके बाद स्पेसिफिकली इस बिल से रिगार्डिंग पता नहीं कितने नंबर ऑफ ड्राफ्ट्स आ चुके हैं, बट अभी तक कोई भी पास नहीं हुआ है एंड इट इज नॉट बिकम अ लॉ. So it also praised India's digital public infrastructure and said that it serves a lesson for other countries that are embarking on their digital transformation. So यहाँ पे इंडिया की तारीफ भी की गई. एंड आपको पता होना चाहिए कि जब हम डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की बात करते हैं तो व्हाट आर लाइक व्हाट ऑल फॉर्म्स अ पार्ट ऑफ इट. सो इससे रिगार्डिंग क्वेश्चन जरूर आ सकता है. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And apart from that, do subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Thank you so much for joining us for today.